So this week, at least for me, has been the week that the virus, the novel coronavirus, stopped being an abstraction and became real. This was the week that we had deaths in our county and in Van Buren County. This was the week that a dear friend who lives in New York City presumably got the virus, though she was not tested, and she is on the mend, but she was very sick for a few days. This was the week that my parents had a known exposure, and my mom went to the emergency room. She is not positive for the virus, but I know there's so many of us who are sharing stories like that about the illness getting closer and closer to the people that we love. I also know many of us are feeling the economic impacts of the shelter in place and stay home orders. A number of people in our church community and many in our wider community have lost their jobs this week, including my husband. Though in some ways that makes the logistics of life easier for us. I know that's not true for everyone. But in all this, there are some moments that don't balance the scales in any real way, but at least give me the strength to keep moving forward. So there's the moment that just happened as we all started signing on to this meeting, where I got to see your faces and glimpses of your living room, or just see your names. So you stop being the abstract names on a computer screen and are human again, which is a weird bit of this isolation. There's noticing the first daffodil of the spring. There's the attention and care that my family has brought to the study of the robins in our neighborhood. Again, it doesn't balance it. I don't know what could balance this, but it helps me feel less alone, and that really matters. So I'm so glad that so many of you are choosing to spend a portion of your day with us. Come, let us gather in this weird new way. Come, let us worship together.
Good morning. I'm Tim Bardick, and I'm participating in my role as a member of the Sunday Services Committee, and I'd like to welcome all of you to this virtual version of People's Church. People's Church is a member congregation of the Unitarian Universalist Association and is part of a long tradition of liberal religion. One thing I certainly hope that liberal religion means is that we have a faith that can stand up to the most difficult test that this life presents. I saw online someone on Twitter quoting a passage from J.R.R. Tolkien's book, The Lord of the Rings. And at the beginning of the book, the book's hero, Frodo, is talking to his advisor, the wizard Gandalf, and Frodo says to Gandalf, "I wish that this had not happened in our time." And Gandalf says, "That is my wish, and the wish of all who live to see such times. But that is not for us to decide. All we have to decide is what to do with the time that is given us." I hope that this liberal religion, this church, and whatever daily practices you pursue is giving you what you need to live in such times.
All right, at this time I invite you to find a comfortable singing posture. We're going to sing Meditation on Breathing. Here we go. We'll start with the low part. Breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out. When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out love. When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love.
Okay, Deb's going to light our chalice. Okay. Okay, there's our little chalice, such as it is. May the light we now kindle inspire us to use our powers to heal and not to harm, to help and not to hinder, to bless and not to curse, to serve you, Spirit of freedom.
The thing to know about bunnies is when they get scared, they will either freeze or run. When they freeze, they really hope to blend into their surroundings so that they can avoid detection. And when they run, their goal is to run as fast as they can to arrive at safety. One day, Benjamin Bunny was outside enjoying some fresh clover field eating lunch when suddenly he detected danger. Immediately, he froze in place, discerning where the danger was coming from. Oh, unfortunately, he smelled the scent of a coyote. And as soon as he figured out from which direction the coyote was coming, he darted off as quickly as he could in the opposite direction. He did not want to lead Coyote back to his family's bunny burrow. But he knew of another place where he could go and find safety if he could just arrive there prior to the coyote catching up to him. Now, coyotes have longer legs than bunnies. And so he was running as fast as he possibly could towards this alternative hiding place in this other burrow. It wasn't long before he felt Coyote's hot breath right on the back of his neck when he finally spotted the hole. And he dove into the new burrow as quickly as he could. Unfortunately, the hole was too small for Coyote to follow him. As he arrived deeply burrowed in this den, his heart was pounding 1,000,000 miles a minute. His breath was so fast and ragged, and he was sure that he just narrowly escaped death. Fortunately, he knew some great ideas about how to calm himself down when he was feeling very afraid. He tried, just like his mom had taught him, to take a deep, long breath. But it was pretty rapid because his heart was still pounding so quickly and his breathing was so rapid. And so he took another breath and he tried to hold it a little bit longer before he let it out. And finally, on his third breath, he could feel his whole body calming, settling down from being so afraid from such a scary experience. And as he laid in this bunny burrow for a while and did some deep breathing to bring his whole nervous system down, he thought he could hear singing. What is that sound? He said. So he breathed even softer, even calmer, even quieter so that he could hear that distant sound. And it sounded like it was coming from a neighboring borough, another family was singing a very catchy tune. And he laid there for a long time, breathing and listening to it. And the longer he listened to it, the calmer and better he felt. He found himself humming along to their tune. And after quite some time had passed and he thought it was almost dusk, he knew the coyote had left and it was safe for him to come out and make his way back to the bunny family burrow. So he made a beeline home. His family was so happy to see him, they wondered where he had been all day. And as he recounted the tales of his encounter, his family, his siblings were in awe of his courage and his wit, especially little Betsy and Bonobo Bunny, who really looked up to their big brother. So Benjamin decided to teach them the song that he had heard the other family singing and to see if it could make his brothers and sisters feel better like it made him. And this is how it went. Every little cell in my body is happy. Every little cell in my body is well. Every little cell in my body is happy. Every little cell in my body is well. I'm so glad every little cell in my body is happy and well. I'm so glad every little cell in my body is happy and well. Every little cell in my body is happy. Every little cell in my body is well. Every little cell in my body is happy. Every little cell in my body is well. I'm so glad every little cell in my body is happy and well. I'm so glad every little cell in my body is happy and well. Well, regardless to say, the whole bunny family absolutely loved this song. It had such a catchy tune, and it made them feel so much better inside. They decided to sing it every day. And it wasn't long before they started to hear the songbirds in the neighborhood also singing the song. It was like the forest version of this song going viral on Facebook. And it went through the whole forest glen where all of the families could hear it and keep singing it. And I think if it's a song that your family wanted to sing in your house, Benjamin Bunny would be super glad about that too, especially if it made you feel any better when times are hard and scary and we feel afraid. Give it a try. See how it feels.
Thank you, Diane. I think we will start singing that at my house. People are just people. And that is true in these challenging, strange times. In the past weeks, so many of you have stepped off for all that you can, whether that's making phone calls, errands, giving donations. I'm so grateful. And this is the moment we ask you to continue to be the people that you are and continue to support the important work of this. Offering will not be received.
I'd like to invite you to join in reading the words for giving thanks, which hopefully people can hear. I think some people are having trouble with audio, and I'm sure people are working on that to the extent we can. From the countless gifts we each have been given, gifts of life and love and sustenance, we bring these small portions to share in the works of love which none of us can accomplish alone.
I know I am the source of some of the audio problems. I'm working on it, and I might end up calling in by phone and provide audio that way.
Better.
We're going to figure this out. Regardless of the technological hiccups along the way, this is a community that supports one another in good times and in hard times. One of the ways that we do that is by taking time during our services chat and to type the chat box, and I would call to have the audio. This is a remembrance, sources of courage and compassion. Watch with those who are overwatched and weep this day. The suffering soothed, and the weary find rest. The joyous be shielded, and the dying those who love them find peace. And all of us are loved around us always. So as that connects us to all that exists.
All right, next, I'd like to teach you a new song. It's very simple, easy to pick up. And in this song, we are being still and we are listening as well as singing. So here you go. Be still and breathe. Be still and be. Listen to heartache, listen to grief. Be still and breathe. Be still and be. Listen to sorrow, listen to pain. Be still and breathe. Be still and be. Listen to anger, listen to hurt. Be still and breathe. Be still and be. Be still and breathe. Be still and be.
I invite everyone to start by taking breathing in. I know I am breathing in. And breathing out. I know I am breathing out. Breathing in, my breath grows slow. Breathing out, my breath grows deep. Breathing in, I dwell in the present moment. And breathing out, I know that this is a wonderful moment. I want to invite you to do something called the 4-7-8 breathing. You can Google 4-7-8 breaths, and all the reasons why this is great for you comes up. But basically what you do is you breathe in to the count of 4, you hold your breath for the count of 7, and then you slowly exhale to the count of 8. So basically, in, hold for 7, and then out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And so I invite you to do this breath together, or you can just, if that doesn't work for you, take some deep, slow belly breaths. And I'm going to share this meditation while we breathe, acknowledging what we're experiencing right now in this surreal time. For those of us who are on the front lines, I want that are going to work every day, we see you and we appreciate you. For those of us who are home with children 24/7, we see you and we appreciate you. For those of us who are home alone and feeling lonely, we see you and we acknowledge you. For those of us who have lost our jobs, income, health insurance, we see you and we acknowledge you. For those of us who are afraid to go to the grocery store, we see you and we acknowledge you. For those of us who are quarantined in a place where we don't feel safe, we feel abused, we see you and we acknowledge you. For those of us who are feeling afraid of the unknown nature of this situation, we see you and we acknowledge you. For those of us who are celebrating holidays and birthdays and anniversaries and first steps and first words and last words and last breaths, we see you and we acknowledge you. Remember to take deep belly breaths. Or breathe in for 4, hold for 7, and slowly exhale for 8. For those of us who are sick, who have loved ones who are sick, we see you, we acknowledge you. For those of us who are homeless or transportationless, we see you and we acknowledge you. For those of us who are struggling with grief, with depression, with mental illness, we see you and we acknowledge you. For those of us who are working from home while managing kids at home, we see you and we acknowledge you. For those of us who are mourning the loss of activities that we loved, we see you and we acknowledge you. For those of us who are really appreciating a slower pace of life and trying to count our blessings every day, we see you and we acknowledge you. For all those children and their teachers who will not be returning to school for the rest of the year, we see you and we acknowledge you. For those who are trying to stay sober without access to their regular 12-step meetings, we see you and we acknowledge you. For all of those who are making masks and distributing them, we see you and we acknowledge you. For those who are missing their families and their friends, we see you and we acknowledge you. For those of us who are sheltering in place during these surreal times, know that you are seen and you are acknowledged. May we all feel the love that surrounds us all. May we remember that we are not alone. And may we each do the best that we can do every single day. I invite you to just take some more deep breaths with me as we sit for a moment in silent meditation.
Our first reading today comes from Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire by J.K. Rowling. This passage in the text occurs right after Harry Potter returns from a trying time in which one of his companions is killed. Dumbledore, the head of the school Harry attends and Harry's mentor, is trying to help Harry process that experience. And Harry's godfather, Sirius, is also present. "If I thought I could help you," Dumbledore said gently. Can anyone hear me at this point? Okay. Thank you for your persistence. This is an adventure for us all. "If I thought I could help you," Dumbledore said gently, "by putting you in an enchanted sleep and allowing you to postpone the moment when you would have to think about what has happened tonight, I would do it. But I know better. Numbing the pain for a while will make it worse when you finally feel it. You have shown bravery beyond anything I could have expected of you. I ask you to demonstrate your courage one more time. I ask you to tell us what happened." Once or twice, Sirius made a noise as though about to say something, his hand still tight on Harry's shoulder. But Dumbledore raised his hand to stop him. and Harry was glad of this, because it was easier to keep going now he had started. It was even a relief. He felt almost as though something poisonous was being extracted from him. It was costing him every bit of determination he had to keep talking, yet he sensed that once he had finished, he would feel better.
The next reading is the poem Passover Remembered by Alla Renee Bozarth. Not bring only the traditions spirit for the bread rise. Standing, be ready to move at a moment's notice. Do not hesitate to leave your old ways behind. So, always surrender to the need of the time. Love justice and luckily before you have time to back and I will be with you in the fire and with you in the cloud. I will give you dreams in the desert to guide you safely home to that place you have not yet seen. I send you to learn to make it away and to learn my ways more deeply. Some people will be so changed by weathers and wines that even your closest friend will have learned teachers as though for the first time. Some of you will not change at all. Some will be abandoned, their dear loves, and such by those who have known you since birth and feel abandoned you. Some will find new and unlikely faces and old friends faithful and true as a pillar of God's flame. Sing songs as you go and hold it close together. You may at times feel confused and lose your way. Keep telling the stories. Make as you go, remembering the way back from before. So you'll begin the first many days of deliverance on these desert deeds. It is the first of many beginnings, your path tide. Remain true to this mystery. Pass on the whole story. Do not go back. I am with you now, and I'm waiting for you. Well, I don't know if there's a point in the second poem. I don't know if I can even hear him. If you give me feedback as to whether there's any point to me doing the second poem. No.
Jim, I just pasted it into the chat. I think that might be the most effective way to get that to people.
Okay, so I'll skip the second poem. It's a lovely poem. You should read it.
So, friends, I am going to try to give this sermon. If it doesn't work, I will send the text out in an email tomorrow. I appreciate you all bearing with us. And we're going to try to figure out why today it was so much more challenging than last week. We thought we got this under our feet a little bit. About 4,000 years ago, there was probably a real historical person named Moses who probably led a small group of people from slavery in Egypt to freedom in the land of Israel. That story spoke to the people who welcomed the followers of Moses and to their children and children's children and following generations. So they kept telling the story. The story was passed down orally for at least 500 years before it was written down, and then probably about another 500 years until it was written down in the form we know. And as often happens, the storytellers likely embellished the story along the way. In the retellings, God sent 10 plagues to the Egyptians to convince them to free Moses and his people. The Nile River turns to blood. The country is swarmed with frogs, then gnats, then flies. Then Egyptians' livestock dies. Then the people and remaining animals are struck with festering boils. Next is thunder and hail. Then locusts devour all the surviving plants and cover the ground. Then there's total darkness for 3 days. The final plague is the death of the firstborn child of every family and every animal in the land of Egypt. In these retellings, once the Pharaoh finally decides to let Moses and his people go, he has second thoughts and sends his armies after them. Moses and his people are cornered at the shoreline of the Red Sea, and God parts the sea to allow their safe passage, and then drowns the Egyptian armies who pursue them. It then takes Moses and his followers 40 years to find their way to freedom. Many of us know this story, the story of Exodus, well. It is in the scriptures of Christians and Jews, and it's a story that our Jewish friends, neighbors, and fellow congregants tell every spring during the holiday of Passover, which begins this Wednesday evening. The main observance of Passover is the Seder meal. Friends and family gather, this year often via video conference, though I hope they have a better go of it than we are right now, for a ritual meal that includes special foods and a retelling of the Exodus story I just told. During this meal, there's a series of questions asked by the youngest person in attendance, which include, how is this night different from all other nights? There are songs and prayers and foods eaten in specific ways, and a hunt for a hidden piece of matzah, the unleavened bread, and 4 cups of wine for each adult. Throughout this special meal, the story of the Exodus is told, and another generation is brought into this story, claims it as their own, uses it to make sense of themselves and their world, especially in times of suffering. We know the power of story. We know that having a story to find yourself inside can make things easier to bear. When we are struggling, we can turn to an old story of struggle and see that, yes, our ancestors made it through. Perhaps there's hope for us as well. And that is one piece of why Jewish folks tell this story every year. I'm realizing I skipped the song because I was about to say, a few minutes ago, Savannah led us in singing Go Down Moses, but I just powered through that in my anxiety about all of this. Imagine that we have sung that. and look it up later because it is a beautiful, beautiful song. That's a spiritual that was created out of the experience of enslavement by Black people in this country, the enslavement of Black people in this country. Black people found themselves in the ancient Exodus story, and it provided hope, both spiritual and tangible. Hope of being in a story in which freedom happens at the end. And it was one of the signal songs that Harriet Tubman used as she helped people free from slavery. And that claiming of biblical stories to make sense of current circumstances has not stopped. People tell the same stories over and over because they echo and make sense in new ways. That is why those ancient stories have endured, while a lot of other ancient stories aren't told again and again and again. When he was a candidate for president, Barack Obama gave a speech about race called A More Perfect Union. And in that speech, he describes his experience in the Black church. He spoke, "I imagined the stories of ordinary Black people merging with the stories of David and Goliath, Moses and Pharaoh, the Christians in the lion's den, Ezekiel's field of dry bones. And those stories of survival and freedom and hope became our story, my story. The blood that had spilled was our blood, the tears our tears, until this Black church on this bright day seemed once more a vessel carrying the story of a people into future generations and into the larger world. Our trials and triumphs became at once unique and universal, Black and more than Black. And chronicling our journey, the stories and songs gave us a means to reclaim memories that we didn't need to feel shame about, memories that all people might study and cherish, and with which we could start to rebuild. So in these challenging times of pandemic, I invite you to find yourself a story for companionship. Perhaps it is the Exodus narrative. That's a popular choice this time of year. Perhaps not. Perhaps it is another ancient wisdom story. Perhaps it's the fantasy literature that we've already quoted, The Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter. Perhaps you find meaning in history or companionship in novels or television. I found myself in recent weeks getting really annoyed with a lot of media that I've been consuming because people will just do things like go to a restaurant, and I can't do that. So I found other things. I've been reading a book about 14th century European history, about the time when the bubonic plague ravaged that continent. I've also been reading The Plague, a novel by Albert Camus about a town enduring a pandemic. And I'm finding strange comfort in these stories and these histories these days. A dear friend of mine has been reading a novel about someone going through house arrest. And she reports that that is comforting now too. So I want that comfort and companionship for all of you, whatever stories they are, ancient, historical, fantasy, or whatever medium, books and podcasts, television and movies. I feel less alone when I remember how others, real and fictional, have endured hard times and made meaning out of them. So much of the religious life is telling old stories in new ways that speak to the present moment. So I hope you find the stories that hold truth for you in these strange days. And as we try to make sense of this time with stories, please pay special attention to your experience of this time, the things that will become your stories when we have enough distance to start shaping them into narratives. Whether your days are a flurry of busyness or boredom, perhaps you've experienced time collapsing in a strange way. We might be losing track of the days of the week. We might be struggling to remember if something happened last week or last month or yesterday. I know that's been hard for me. And this is in part a trauma response. I know that we are all experiencing this moment in different ways, and trauma is a strong word. And it's a true description of these days for some of us now. And I fear that it will become true for even more of us in the coming weeks. So please, if you can, pay attention to your experience. Document it or give it voice in some way. This could be journaling or keeping a calendar. This could be a daily check-in with the people you live with, or a weekly check-in call with a friend, or something else. But whatever it is, please find a way. Because one of the things that trauma does to us is destroy our memories. We only remember glimpses or images, but not a clear sequence of events, not beginning, middle, end. And one of the key ways to make sense of trauma after the event is to tell a true story of what happened. We're going to need our stories, individually and collectively, to make sense of this time after it ends. Telling the story is often a component of treatment for traumas and individual psychotherapy, and it's also the work of healing from communal trauma. We will need to remember the truth of these strange and distancing days. Not because it makes everything better necessarily right away, but the truth matters. Judith Herman is an expert on trauma whose book I've returned to in these times. And she writes, the goal of recounting the trauma story is integration, not exorcism. In the process of reconstruction, the trauma story does undergo a transformation, but only in the sense of becoming more present and more real. The fundamental premise of the work is a belief in the restorative power of truth-telling. We saw this too in the piece of Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire that I read earlier. Dumbledore, Harry's teacher, knows Harry has to tell the story of what happened to him to extract the poison and feel some peace. The heart does not forget. And when this season of social distancing ends, we're going to need to be able to piece together what we experienced into something like a story. And as I told a few of you this week, if things are really hard for you, if all you can do is get through the next 10 minutes and the next 10 minutes after that and the next 10 minutes after that, that is enough. Please don't hear these ideas as requirements if you are already drowning in obligations. We know that this time is exhausting for some of us. We know that some are tamping down or setting aside our feelings because we just can't deal with them right now. There is too much else to attend to. And that's a fine short-term survival strategy. We know the emotional work will have to happen at some point, but it doesn't have to happen today. But for those of you with the time and energy to tell these stories, to start writing down the details that become the bigger stories, please do that for all of us, because we are going to need that. So dear ones, in these strange days, as we are all navigating new realities, whether that's gathering like this, working essentially, working from home, or just doing almost everything in a new way, tell yourself and one another the truth. Find the stories that hold meaning and help you make sense of these days and help you to feel less alone. Take good care of yourselves. Take good care of each other. May it be so. May we make it so. And amen.
All right, our closing song is There Is More Love. That's number 95, and if you have a hymnal. There is more love somewhere. There is more love somewhere. I'm gonna keep on till I find it. There is more love somewhere. There is more hope somewhere. There is more hope somewhere. I'm gonna keep on till I find it. There is more hope somewhere. Next is peace. There is more peace somewhere. There is more peace somewhere. I'm gonna keep on till I find it. There is more peace somewhere. Last is joy. There is more joy somewhere. There is more joy somewhere. And I'm gonna keep on till I find it. There is more joy somewhere.
So, friends, in a few minutes, we're going to do a virtual coffee hour, except it will be 15 minutes. So if you'd like to linger and talk with a few random people's people, we will experiment with how well that's going to work today, technically. But I invite you to do that. And if that's not what you want to do today, you can leave the meeting whenever you're ready. Let's close with these words. Keep alert. Stand firm in your faith. Be courageous. Be strong. Let all you do be done in love. Let us go in peace and go in love.